So this will be a walkthrough or a complete overview of all the features that are in this customization app called Food Swings. It's a food customization app for the dishes offered by a fictional food truck called Food Swings, and the two dishes that are up for customization are nachos and sundaes. So you can customize these two dishes accordingly, and this app is meant for that, to customize the dish that you want as per how you want it and place an order so that you can go pick it up from the food truck. So this app is actually part of a portfolio project that I am trying to put up for the Coursera UX design certificate offered by Google. And for that, I tried to build this app, and I've got the prompt to build this food customization app for a food truck from this website called sharpen.design, which offers a bunch of design prompts for different situations and scenarios. So let's begin. Firstly, I started by doing a little survey of sorts, that is, sending out a Google form to understand the target audience and the user base that will be approaching this food truck. So it consists of a bunch of questions, that is, the age group and how often they visit customization uh, of stalls in general, and their personality traits, which are inherently tied to the food customization process, and certain subjective questions related to their dietary preferences, and so on and so forth. So while uh, as part of the actual process, this survey is supposed to be much more extensive, in the sense that you're expected to make a survey reach a good number of people. Since I just started out, I couldn't get this form to reach many people, and so mostly this form was answered by people I know. So in that sense, the answers could be slightly biased, but I decided to proceed. Using the answers that I'd gotten from the food survey, I then proceeded to construct some user personas. So the first user persona that I constructed is that of Vaishwati. So Vaishwati finds the whole process of food customization overwhelming. She's a college student, and she likes to try out different things, but the whole process of customizing her food from scratch puts her in an overwhelming and confusing position, because she feels it's better to choose from a bunch of catered meals uh, with certain options, rather than have to build the entire dish from scratch with a lot of options to choose from at every stage of the process. Um, the next persona we have is that of Hari. He's also a student, and he's actually interning at a company. Uh, and close to the company, Food Swings is located, so he prefers going there for a quick lunch. But he's also very health conscious. Because of this, he actually prefers customizing his dish to the T, so that he knows what exactly goes into building his dish. Um, he's not really concerned about experimenting with different things, so far as it is quick and reliable and caters to his needs of being um, healthy and adhering to his particular diet. So these are the two user personas that we have formed. And now let's see the next thing that I found to be integral to start building the app, which are the UX journey maps. So here I have the UX journey map of Vaishwati Jaini. So her ultimate end goal is to be able to take her time in deciding the toppings she wants and getting help to be able to choose toppings for customizing her food. So we've created a list under each stage that she goes through. Firstly, the first stage would be to wait in line. The second stage would be to place the order, And the third stage would be to collect the order. In the wait in line stage, the main tasks are to decide which dish she wants to place an order for and to stand and wait for her turn. In the place order stage is where she experiences confusion, and this is the stage where this is the stage where we see our persona experiencing most of their pain points. Um, and the last stage would be to collect the order. So the feelings that our persona feels while completing these tasks at each of these stages are outlined here, as well as the possible steps that we could take to overcome the frustration and pain points that the user is facing is also outlined here. For example, in the second stage, which is where Shruti places an order, uh, we have tried to understand what exactly she's going through, and it's somewhat similar to the paradox of choice. So, in order to balance this out, there should be the right number of customization options to choose from at each stage, which means that the number of options shouldn't be too less, that the whole concept of customization is redundant, but at the same time, it shouldn't be too much so as to overwhelm the user. Similarly, we have our next persona, which is Hari, and we have the same three stages, but his frustrations and pain points are different, right? Because uh, his end goal is different from that of Vaishwati. His end goal is to be able to get a healthy and a quick meal, such that he can do a good breakdown of the dish he's consuming and have control over it. Most of the pain point he's facing is actually in the first stage of the journey or the workflow, because he's very concerned about being able to make it back to his office in time. He's very concerned about the time that goes in simply waiting in the queue. In addition to his frustrations and pain points here, he also faces frustrations and pain points in placing an order, mainly due to the fact that Hari really doesn't experiment much. He has a bunch of specific customizations that he always chooses because that fits his diet. And he wished there was a way to be able to place this order without having to repeat the same thing every day. So these are Hari's pain points, and we've also come up with some improvement opportunities for the same, like trying to bookmark toppings with their names, flavors, and calorie amounts so that Hari can be more aware of what he's consuming, right? And for this particular, for the pain point that he experiences in this particular stage, we can have some way for Hari to know the waiting time, or some way for people who use the app on a regular basis to have a lesser waiting time than other people who come to the food truck. So now that we're done analyzing our UX journey maps, we see the goal that we're working towards for building the app finally laid out in the form of a problem statement. So this is our problem statement, and we have one problem statement each for each of our personas. So for the problem statement for Vaishwati, it is for us to mainly help her in picking toppings for her dish without taking too long to do it, right? That is, this will help us solve her main frustration and pain point, which is overwhelming and confusing her. So our our goal should be to make the process of customization itself easy for her and to make it more calming. Whereas the problem statement for Hari is a way to have healthier options for toppings, to let him know the complete breakdown of his dish, and also to ensure to minimize his waiting time or help him plan how much time he's going to um, spend or need in order to order the meal. So now we can actually proceed to see uh, the result of these documentations, which is the prototype of the app. So this is the homepage of our Food Swings app. As one can see, it's divided into three sections: a waiting time tracker, an overview of some popular combinations that are used for the food customization and deals that are running right now. And so coming to each of our sections, the first section, which is a waiting time tracker, is to estimate the amount of time that the user would have to wait at the food truck um, when he goes there at that point in time. So for example, if the user reaches the food truck at around 12 o'clock, which is a peak time, right? Because that's when people usually have lunch. So we can see that the waiting time is really high. That's around 50 minutes. And this part of the waiting, the lines in this part of the waiting time tracker are indicated in dotted or dashed because we haven't reached this time yet. Like the current time is around say 1:30. So we haven't reached this point of time yet. And so this dashed or dotted lines are just an estimation of what the waiting time would be based on previous trends. But these are the waiting times that have been chalked in real time because all this time has been passed and right now it's 1:30, which is the current time. So the purpose of a waiting time tracker is obvious, so that the user doesn't waste time standing at the food truck. And it's especially useful for our persona who works in the office and wants to grab a quick lunch, because we wouldn't want that user to waste a lot of time just waiting in the queue for their meal. Um, Another thing to note is that uh, there is no scheduling of your meal per se that is introduced in this app. You can't really schedule a meal uh, to be ready by 1 o'clock because it's a food truck, right? They prepare food on the go. They don't have that level of flexibility to offer you to schedule your meal like a cafe or a restaurant. So what we instead have is a set alert feature, which we will see when we reach the cart section. So the set alert feature basically helps you place your order in such a way that it will be ready by the time you want it to. For example, we see that the wait time at 12 is around 50 minutes. So if you reach the food truck at 12 hoping to finish off your food or get your meal by 12:30, that's not possible because you'd have to wait for 50 minutes at least. So what you can do is you set an alert when you're in your cart saying that you want your order ready by 12. So the app will send you an alert, say at around 11:25, right? Say at 11:25 when the wait time is approximately 35 minutes, right? So this adds up, meaning that if your order is received at 11:25, it will be ready by 12. So you can place your order at 11:25. So the app will send you an alert at 11:25 saying you might want to place your order right now if you want it ready by 12. So this is how the set alert feature works. I know it sounds a bit complicated right now, but hopefully when we see it in as part of the cart, it'll become more clear. So this is an overview of the waiting time tracker. It has the time on the horizontal axis and the time duration on the vertical axis, which is the waiting time. Um, the next part of our homepage is the popular combos section, which suggests some popular combos that are working out for dishes right now. So we have the rainbow sprinkles and Oreo crumbs, which seems to be a popular combination for customizing sundaes right now. We also have barbecue sauce and red cabbage, which seems to be a popular combination for customizing nachos, and so on and so forth. So you can also notice that in addition to displaying how the components of each of the combinations look, and also the labeling that says which dish that this combination um, is for, there's also a little bookmark icon here, which is to save this combo. So for example, now that I've saved the combination of rainbow sprinkles and Oreo crumbs, this combination will be available in my saved combos list that I can then include as part of my Sunday. So this is how the hit combo section works. Now this is the deals and offers section, the deals you can't miss, which are the offers that are running currently. So the first one is a deal called Monday Blues, where you get one serving of blueberries free of cost on Mondays for up to two Sunday orders. There's also a coupon code here that you can copy and paste it in the cart while checking out. There are more offers and deals here in this row that you can scroll through and check out as well. So this is an overview of the home page and all the sections in it. Let's just quickly explore these two icons as well. So if you click on the user icon here, you get the name on which the profile was registered or the name you had given or inputted when you first downloaded the app. And you have my order history here. So my order history, I feel it will be better if we look at it towards the end of this workflow, since we would have completed placing an order and we can get a better idea of how the order history page would look like. So we also have the hamburger icon, a menu icon here. So the navigation style that we're following is that of this. So I'll just click on this, and here we have home, menu, cart. So if I quickly go to menu and click on it, we come to the menu overview page. So this is the menu of our app, uh, from which we can pretty much place all our orders. It's broadly divided into three sections. One is this playground of filters. Second is the favorite section, where you basically get to save entire dishes or entire um, items, and you can also name them accordingly so that you remember what you've saved, and that will be displayed as your favorites under your favorites. And there's also a third section which is to help you redirect uh, to the pages, to the respective pages, to build your dish from scratch entirely and customize it accordingly. So we'll look through each section of the menu one by one. So first we'll come to this playground of filters. So first let me just expand this entire section properly. So what this section basically is that you get to set the intensity of the flavors in your dish. So we have here around 5 flavors, and you can set the intensity of these flavors on scales provided here. And as you've noticed, these scales are marked by visual cues and not numbers. So there's cheese and a chili here, denoting the extremes of the spicy flavor. So we could have also chosen numbers like 1 to 10, but we chose not to do that because, say, both my friend and I are in the mood for a spicy dish, and we both want to have something spicy. But I have a higher spice tolerance than my friend. And when I say I want something spicy, and when my friend says he wants something spicy, we both actually mean different levels of spice included in the dish because our perception of spiciness is different. So, if we had put numbers alongside the scale, say I put 1 here and 10 here, so I would choose a 10 because I'm in the mood for a really spicy dish, and my friend also chooses 10 because he's in the mood for a really spicy dish as well. Does that mean that the app needs to curate the same dish for both of us? Um, Not really, right? That wouldn't work out because I have a higher spice tolerance than my friend. So obviously, if the same dish is recommended to us, it would end up disappointing at least one of us, since even though both of us wanted a really spicy dish, both of us technically mean different things. So, since having numbers introduces this sense of ambiguity, having visual cues is better in that sense. This is because visual cues indicate actual toppings that will be included in a dish. For example, here you can see icon of a cheese, and here you can see the icon of a chili. So since I have a higher spice tolerance,
I will push the slider all the way till this extreme end, since I want chilies to be included in my dish. That's the level of spice I want. But if my friend, who's also in the mood for a spicy dish, once he sees chilies, he knows that having whole chilies is a bit too much for him. And so he won't push the slider till that extreme. He knows that um, he needs to push the slider to the far end, but not all the way up till here, till where I pushed, since he knows that having whole chilies in his dish is a bit too much spice for him. So that way, we have a better control of what can be included in the dish and what suits that person accordingly. And this way, the app will also know what to include in the dish and what not to. So let's start. Um, I would like a fairly spicy dish, so I'm just gonna set my slider to a good level. Then I would also like a little bit of sweetness to my dish just to cut that spiciness, and tanginess as well. I don't want too much salt in my dish, and I leave the bitter to a very low level because I don't really want any bitter taste in my dish. Uh, so I think this is a broad overview of the intensity of flavors I like in my dish. Now I'll let the recommendation algorithm do its job and click on next. And I have a bunch of recommendations lined up here for me, like we can see. So um, the whether the dish contains a non-vegetarian topping or not is also indicated by the difference in color. If it does include any non-vegetarian toppings, the bar is red color, but if it includes only vegetarian toppings and sauces, it's indicated with a green color. So for each of these recommended dishes, we have two buttons here. Let's click on the first button and see what happens. Um, we get a complete breakdown of what the dish consists of. So flavor. So these three are the ingredients, main three primary ingredients that were used to bring about the intensity of flavors that we described here. Since we wanted a lot of spice, chilies is one of the main ingredients, and even honey chili sauce, since we wanted spice with a little bit of sweetness as well. And since we wanted some amount of tanginess as well, there's jalapenos as well. For the protein in the dish, that's how the uh, algorithm works. It builds with the flavors and adds a protein to the nacho dish. So that's how I've visualized it to work. So the protein that it chose to add is ham, and some extra toppings just to uh, add to all these flavors. We have lettuce, red cabbage, pickles, and even Szechuan sauce. So this is the complete breakdown of the dish, and it looks like a good dish to me. So I'll just click on the plus icon here to add it to the cart. Um, let's confirm whether it's actually added to the cart. So I'll just click on the hamburger menu icon here and navigate to the cart. And sure enough, we can see that the dish we've added from the menu is here in the cart. And we have the total ingredients plus price breakdown of the dish here in the cart. And we can now go back to our menu from where we placed this order. And we're brought back to our menu section. So you can see that none of the filters have actually been reset, and the filters are as it is, they're intact. The arrow is in fact gray because it's the same configuration as before. Um, so to explain the reasoning behind why I introduced this in our app, it's because one of our personas was a persona who was indecisive and who couldn't decide from all the toppings, all the sauces. They found that whole process fussy and confusing. So, to help them in their decision making process, we've introduced this filter playground. I feel it helps because, firstly, you are now uh, not presenting them with too many options. Oftentimes, the food you want is very closely tied with your mood. Like, you can, we're often seen describing to our friends or people around us saying, I'm in the mood for something spicy, I would like something sweet right now. We don't know what exactly we want, but we know the kind of flavor that we're craving. uh, we don't exactly know what to order, but we know a broad overview of the flavors we'd like to experience. So, keeping that in mind, I thought it would be helpful to introduce this set of filters, which are solely based on the flavors you would like to see in your dish. Um, so this covers one of our personas, right? The indecisive persona, the persona who gets overwhelmed with all the options. What about our other persona who uh, is diet conscious and who would like a set fixed amount of nutrients and calories in their dish? For that, we have to switch our filter playground mode, and we can do that using this sort of slide bar here. I'll just drag this little slider bar here and we can see that our filters have now switched. So there's uh, three different components here. One is a calorie count, one is a pie chart of carbs, protein, and fats, and one is a filter which sort of limits the amount of sugar, fiber, and sodium that you like in your dish. So we look at each of these. For the calorie count, let's say for now I put around 1,000 calories. So I limit the number of calories in my dish to be 1,000. Um, Now I'll go to this pie chart here and I'll set the proportion of carbs, protein, and fats I like in my dish. Let's say I want a decent amount of carbs, very less amount of fats, and most of the dish comprising of protein. So this is the arrangement of the pie chart. Um, we'll also go to setting the limits for sugar, fiber, and sodium. I don't want much sugar in my dish. I'll keep that at a minimum. So I've just pulled the slider by here. That's come to around 1.7 grams. I think I don't want more than that. Um, Fiber is good. I like a lot of fiber in my dish, so I'll stretch the slider bar more. Um, and I also don't want too much sodium in my dish. So yeah, this is the configuration we have. Now we're going to run our recommendation algorithm, or we're going to see what the app will recommend to us based on our settings. Now we have to keep in mind that it's very difficult to get exactly 1,000 calories in the dish and exactly this breakdown of our settings. So what the dishes recommended to us will have is the closest approximate breakdown of this, right? So let's click on this arrow. So we have a couple of recommendations here. I'll go with the nachos. Let me see its complete breakdown. So this is the complete nutrient information of the dish. You can see that two very protein rich toppings have been put here, which is ham and pan fried tofu, because we wanted a greater proportion of protein in our dish. You can also see that the breakdown of protein, carbs, and fat is roughly equivalent to the proportions we set in our pie chart. And you can also see that the sodium, sugar, and fiber quantities are constrained to the limits we set. So all in all, this looks like a dish that I want, and I'll just add it to my cart.
So I'll just check the cart once to confirm this.
We do have our nachos dish added here. So this was the nachos dish that got added when we were setting filters that describe the intensity of flavors that we wanted in our dish. And this is the nachos dish that we just added by setting filters on how we would like the nutritional breakdown of the dish to be.
So I'll just go back to our menu.
So now that we've had a good look at how this section works, let's navigate to the below sections. So we have the favorite section here. And in our favorite section, we can see that the names of two dishes are displayed as of yet. And there's a plus icon and a drop down arrow on either side of the dish name. So if we click on the drop down arrow next to the dish, we get a breakdown of the dish and all the components that make up the dish. And if we actually click on the drop down arrow at the bottom of the section itself, we get a expanded view of the favorite section, which lists all of the dishes that we've marked as favorite. And if we click on the plus icon that we can see on either side of each dish, that particular dish gets added to the cart. So suppose I click on the plus icon here next to Devil's Finger Nachos, it would mean that our dish is added to cart, and we can actually scroll up and navigate to the cart in order to confirm that
The dish is actually added to cart.
And once we go to our cart, we can see that our dish has been added as well. It's called Devil's Finger Nachos. That's what we've named it. And we can see the number of calories in the dish as well as the value that it's priced at.
Now going back to our menu section.
We've finished exploring this section. We've also had a complete overview on how we can check out the various dishes under the favorite section. So the last and final section is build your dish, where we get to construct our dish from scratch and customize it however we'd like. And these are the links redirecting us to the customization pages of the respective dishes. So if I click on nachos, I land on the first page of customization for the nachos, from where I can start building my nachos dish. So this is the starting page of the customization of our nachos dish. We start by choosing the proportion of wheat and corn we'd like in our chips. I've chosen to incorporate both wheat and corn because one of our personas is diet conscious, and therefore it would be a good option to introduce two different kinds of grains for that user to select their chips accordingly. So the way that this is done is there are circles whose sizes indicate the proportion of wheat and corn respectively in the chips. This roughly translates to about 30% wheat and 70% corn, and it's priced at $1.75. This translates to 50% wheat and 50% corn, since both circles are of the same size, and this roughly translates to 70% wheat and 30% corn. Now, in my opinion, I didn't find it important to include the proportions in numbers so far as the user is aware which grain constitutes the major proportion of their chip. Suppose I want to choose this 50% wheat and 50% corn. I can click on either of these circles to select this option. Suppose I click on this circle, then this entire option is selected, that is 50% wheat and 50% corn. So as soon as I clicked on this circle, we can see that an illustration of a nacho box has appeared, and alongside it, the number of calories that it accounts for, as well as its price. So this illustration is essentially a dynamic illustration, which means that as you keep adding things to your dish, this illustration also keeps changing accordingly. We'll get to see how it works properly in the next sections. Similarly, the calorie value and the price value is also dynamic in the sense that they keep updating in real time as and when you add things to your dish. The bottom area is basically a summary section which provides all the components of your dish in a text format so that you can easily refer to what's included in your dish. There's also a pencil icon here which indicates edit. So you can also edit the components of your dish from this section directly. So this section is also a real-time dynamic preview of the dish that you're building, in the sense that it keeps updating as and when you add things to your dish. So like I mentioned, clicking on either of these circles will make sure that you've selected this entire option. So while selecting 50% wheat and 50% corn, I clicked on this circle and this entire option was selected. If I click on this circle, that would mean this entire option is selected as well. Let's just see that. We can see that this entire option is selected, which is around 30% wheat and 70% corn. So I'll choose this and I'll proceed further to my next section. So this is our topping section and we have a bunch of different toppings here to select from to put in our dish. So I'll just quickly scroll through here so that we can see the entire range of toppings that are available. So now let's proceed to familiarize ourselves with the interface. Firstly, on the top, there's this arrow here, which is used to proceed from one section to the next, like we did for coming from the nacho section to the current topping section where we're at. Next, you can see that all the toppings have three things to them. First is the name of the topping, second, a picture of the topping, and third, a certain amount at the bottom of some of the toppings. So firstly, we need the name of the toppings to indicate what the topping is. I've included a picture of the topping as well because I wanted the experience of choosing the toppings to be as close as possible to the process of doing so at a physical store. At a physical food customization stall, you get to pick all your toppings and you get to see all your toppings and choose from all the toppings that are available. So I wanted to create an experience as close to that as possible, and hence I've included little boxes here which has picture plus the name. Next, we can see a sort of a semicircular structure here with a drop shadow effect, which indicates that it's an overlay which prompts you to interact with it. It could probably be a menu of some sorts. We can also see $0.25 written on this structure. What this essentially indicates is that the base price of all these toppings is $0.25, which means that one serving of these toppings would come at a minimum price of $0.25. Some toppings may not have an additional charge for them, like pan-fried tofu, which would one serving of which would come at a price of $0.25. But some other toppings like black beans and chili have an additional amount underneath them, which means that in addition to the base price, you'll also need to pay this amount in order to get one serving of this topping in your dish. Coming back to this semicircular structure, since it's semicircular in shape, it indicates some sort of incompleteness to it, which prompts the user to drag it, and this reveals a complete circular structure. So we can see that this is a menu and it contains some features which we're going to come to soon. So the reasoning behind why I chose to keep the menu circular shaped is because the rest of the interface has squares and rectangles in it, and this circular shape kind of breaks the monotonous nature of that interface and helps to make the menu stand out and distinguish the menu from the toppings. And the action to drag the menu out was chosen instead of simply tapping the menu or tapping the semicircular structure to reveal the menu, so that the actions for choosing the toppings could be kept separate from the actions to interact with the menu. So in order to choose the toppings, the user would have to tap on a particular topping to select it. But in order to interact with the menu, the user has to first drag the menu out. So keeping these two actions separate, make sure that it's that accessing the menu is more easier.
So on the menu here, we have four options. We'll explore each of these options one by one. So a quick brief of what these options are. The first one here, which looks like a little gaming console, is the gamify option. We'll have a look at that soon. This is the filter option in order to apply filters. This is the option to understand a realistic view of the toppings that are available, and this is the option to view the saved combos. So we look at this one first, which is the gamify option.
I'll just slide the menu back in to reduce the clutter. Now we can also see that the price has shifted to a vertical position to reduce the clutter as much as possible. So firstly, what is the purpose of this gamification mode and why is it there? If we recall, one of our personas was a user who found themselves overwhelmed and confused with all the options that are generally available during the customization of a dish. So all the choices makes them confused and they find the whole process of customizing their dish hard to navigate. Uh, in order to help that kind of user, what we've tried is to gamify this process of selecting the toppings. So this mode is similar to the memory card game that we often play on computers. So in the memory card game, um, there are several cards, and all the patterns beneath each of the cards are hidden. So there are pairs of matching pattern cards, but we don't know which card has what pattern underneath it at first. We start by uncovering one card, um, and then another one by one, and then we try to remember the position of what pattern lies underneath what card and try to match it up with its corresponding pair. So this works in somewhat of a similar way. So once we start working our way through this, hopefully we'll understand better as to how it works. So firstly, we can see that all our toppings are hidden. We do not know which topping lies under what card. So I'll click on a random card. See, I'll click on this one, and we have red cabbage. So firstly, you can see that this illustration has changed. The number of calories have increased, and the price has also slightly increased in order to reflect what we've selected. So this means that red cabbage is now included as a topping in our dish. But say that I'm not particularly fond of red cabbage, so I'll remove it, and it's no more a part of my dish. Now let's say we go for some other topping. I'll click on this one here, and this has turned out to be chilies. Now as a person, I'm very fond of spice, and therefore this seems like a good topping to include in my nachos dish. Now let's select another topping. So randomly, suppose I'd like to turn this card. We have ham here now. So firstly, you can see that both the toppings have been illustrated here, and the calorie value and the price have also been modified. Second, you can see this little circle with 70% and a thumbs up icon here at the top left corner. So similar to the card game where you had to pair cards of the same pattern together, what we're essentially doing here is pairing one topping with another, but not the same ones, but toppings which are a good match for each other. So this 70% indicates that 70% of the people who ordered nachos have this combination of ham and chili as part of their toppings. So 70% is a really good statistic, right? If 70% of the people who are ordering nachos have ham and chilies as part of their toppings, then there must be something good about this combination. and that gives me a sense of confidence to actually include ham and chilies as part of my toppings. So I'm choosing to include ham and chilies in my toppings. But what if I were a vegetarian? Then ham wouldn't be a viable option, and I wouldn't want any of these cards to have non-vegetarian toppings underneath them either. So now this is where the filter feature comes in handy. I'll just pull the menu out and I click on the filter icon here, and we have a box that appears here. And basically what we have to do is select our food preference as vegetarian. But before we do that, we can see two very important options here. One that says apply to all selections and another one that says apply to options henceforth. Now, what's the difference between these two? Apply to all selections essentially means that you are going to be applying all your filters that you've selected from here on to all your selections, including your previous selections. So even though I've already selected ham and I'm then choosing these filters, since I've selected apply to all selections and I'll be selecting vegetarian, it would mean that ham is removed from my toppings. But if I select apply to options henceforth, the filters that I apply from here on would be applicable only for future selections after I set the filters, which means that ham will still be included as part of my toppings, but none of these other cards would have any non-vegetarian toppings underneath them. So that's the primary difference between these two. The first option means that the filters you actually set applies to all your selections, even the toppings you would have selected prior to clicking on the filters feature, whereas apply to options henceforth applies only to toppings that you would like to select after applying your filters feature. Now, since I mentioned that I'm a vegetarian, that would mean that I would like ham to be removed from my toppings as well. So I'll just go with apply to all selections, and then I'll go for the vegetarian filter. I'll just scroll down a little bit so that it's easier to select it. I'll click on vegetarian. So that's the only filter I want to apply for now. We'll explore all the filters in more detail soon. So for now, that's the vegetarian is the only filter I'd like to apply. I'll scroll on top and I'll click confirm. And we can see firstly a message that says our selection has been altered since ham has been removed from our toppings. We can see that the ham card is also no longer present here, and the number of cards have also reduced because now all the non-vegetarian toppings have been removed. Our live illustration of nachos also doesn't have the ham topping, and the number of calories and the price point has also changed. So I'll just push the menu back in, and this is the number of toppings that we have right now to work with, and we can select from here on. So let's say I go with this one. We have black beans here, and the combination of black beans and chili has a really good statistic of 80%.
Which essentially means that 80% of the people who've chosen nachos as their dish to customize and are vegetarian have chosen black beans and chili as part of their toppings.
So this seems like a very encouraging statistic for me, and therefore I'd like to include black beans as part of my toppings to go along with chili. Now let's say I want to select a couple more of toppings. I'll go with this one. This is peppered corn. Now you can see that the statistic has fallen down to 65%. Does this mean that a peppered corn is a bad addition to our black beans and chili combination? Not necessarily. So the reasoning behind this is basically, if you think of it, the more number of toppings you add to your dish, the more exclusive you're making your dish, right? So it's natural that if you have less number of toppings, you'll have more in common with someone else's dish. But the more and more specific you get, as far as your toppings are concerned, it also naturally means that your dish is becoming more and more distinct. So that could also be the reason behind the drop in this statistic. I still feel 65% is a very good number for this combination, and therefore I'll choose to include peppercorn, black beans, and chili in my toppings. Let's select a few more toppings. Let's say I go with this one. That's pan fried tofu, and the statistic has now reduced to 50%. So, like I mentioned, it's natural for this number to drop since your dish is getting more and more specific as you add more toppings to it, which means that it's having less and less things in common with someone else's dish. And that's the reason why this number has dropped, because this number uh, essentially relates your dish with other people's dishes. Now we'll select one more topping before we proceed. Let's say I'll go for this. Now we have eggplant here, and you can see that the measure has dropped to 22% from from 50%, which is what it was earlier. So that's a very significant drop, right? Although we did expect it to drop, 50 to 22, uh, just over a single topping is a bit of a drastic drop, if you ask me, which means that not many people choose eggplant in combination with all these other toppings as part of their dish. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that this combination would taste bad. It just means that not many people have gone for this. So, as I'm not too big of a fan of eggplant either, I'll just choose not to include this in my dish. So I'll click back on it, and these are the toppings that I have in my nachos dish right now. Before we proceed though, a quick overview of how this entire gamification mode helps one of our user personas um, to customize their dish. So, firstly, it creates a sense of suspense, right? Since you don't actually know what you're going to select. So, it introduces a little element of surprise because every time you select on a card, you don't know what's underneath it. And this makes the process of customizing your dish fun, like a game, since it introduces unpredictability to it. Second, since all the toppings are hidden, right? You don't really know what's underneath them at first. And all the cards have the same gray color. Um, this presents a unifying sense to the whole interface and reduces the amount of color, text, and images that the user has to process in one go. So, this overwhelms the user less. Next, by including a metric here, um, you're giving a sense of confidence to the user about the toppings that they've selected by indicating the popularity of that combination. So, in a nutshell, what you're doing is easing the pressure of making a so called right choice on the user. Because when presented with all the options and the complete freedom to select absolutely anything from those toppings, that subconsciously pressurizes the user and demotivates them from starting to customize their dish. But by introducing this gamification mode, you're limiting the visible number of choices, you're introducing a metric that relates their dish to other people's dishes, and at the same time, you're also giving them the flexibility of unselecting a topping and choosing something else. So, all this, in my opinion, helps our user to customize their dish more easily. Now let's return back to our original interface and see what happens. So I'll slide the menu back out and I'll deselect the gamification mode. we can see that our selections are still retained. The selections that we chose in the gamification mode, they're all still present as part of our dish. And we can even confirm that in this bottom section. If we scroll a bit, we can see that our topping still includes all the toppings that we selected as part of our gamification mode. So just because you exit the gamification mode doesn't mean your selections will disappear.
Also, if one looks closely, we can notice that the length of the scroll bar has increased from what it was before, which means that the total number of toppings um, have been reduced from what the initial number that was present. And this is because we have selected the vegetarian preference filter while we were in the gamification mode. So now that we've exited the gamification mode, it doesn't mean that the filters settings are gone either. The filter settings are still retained. So all the toppings that are shown here are also all vegetarian. Since this is a subset of the total number of toppings, hence we can see that there is a reduced number of toppings.
Moving ahead, uh, we had initially talked about how this bottom section is like a real time view of what our dish consists of, and it serves like a preview of the dish that we're building. So let's see how we can actually leverage this bottom section in order to customize our dish. So we can see this little pencil icon here, which indicates edit. So I'll click on this, and we can see that a plus and a minus has appeared alongside nachos, and the same is true for each of the toppings as well. There's a plus and minus that's appeared alongside each of the toppings. So what this plus essentially means is that uh, when we click on it, we can have an extra portion of that topping, and clicking on minus will remove the extra portion of that topping, or discard that entire topping altogether. So let's see all this in action. I'll click on the plus icon here in order to get an extra portion of chili, and you can see that a box with the number 1 has appeared on the upper right corner of the chili topping, which indicates that there's one extra portion of chili along with the regular proportion of chili in our dish. We can also see that this is being reflected dynamically here. Let's now try to add an extra portion of some other topping, say peppered corn. So I'll click on the plus icon again, and we can see now that boxes appeared which says that we will be charged an extra $0.15 for every extra portion of peppered corn that we opt for, and it also asks us as to whether or not we like to proceed. Now, this message didn't appear when we opted for the extra portion of chili, because that came at no additional cost, but that isn't the same for peppered corn, and hence this message is being shown to us. So I don't mind paying an extra amount for my extra portion of peppered corn. So I'll just click on yes. And once we do that, we can see that we now have one extra portion of peppered corn as well. Now, what if I want another extra portion of peppered corn? And since I've already opted for one extra portion, I know that the next extra portion also would come at an additional cost. And so when I click on this plus, I would expect this number to directly increment to 2. So let's click on this plus and see what actually happens. We can see that the message is being displayed again, and it's yet again asking us whether or not we're okay to be charged the extra $0.15 for the additional portion of peppered corn. So while this might seem mildly annoying at first, because I am aware that the extra portion of peppered corn comes at an additional cost, but I'm still being asked again and again. I still feel that it's better to do so, because it's always good to inform the user or ask the user before they're being charged. So it's also always possible that a user could have clicked on this plus by mistake, and If this number would directly have been incremented to 2, it would be charging them unfairly. So I feel, in my opinion, it's a good idea for this message to appear again and again, even if it might come across as annoying to the user. So I'll click on yes, since I did want an extra portion of peppered corn, and now we can see that the number is incremented to 2. Now, what if I want to remove these extra portions of the toppings that I've chosen? Let's say I don't want 2 extra portions of peppered corn, so I'll just click on this minus, and we can see that this number has been decremented to 1. I'll click on the minus again, and we can see that we now have no extra portions of peppered corn. We just have the regular proportion of peppered corn that we opted for in our nachos. Now, if I click on minus again, let's see what happens. This means that our entire topping would be discarded. But before doing so, again, a message appears asking whether we're sure as to removing the peppercorn topping entirely from our dish. I'll click on yes. And we can see that peppercorn has been removed from our set of toppings. In addition to that, you can also see that being reflected in the interface here. Peppercorn is no more selected, right? There's no yellow outline around peppercorn, which means that it's no more included in our dish. Alternatively, instead of going here and removing the peppercorn topping, I could have just clicked on peppercorn while it was selected to deselect it and hence remove it from my dish. Now let's just go to the nachos as well and see what happens when we try to add extra portions of nachos and try to discard extra portions of nachos. Right, so if I click on the plus icon, we get a message saying that the extra portion of nachos comes at an additional cost. So I'll just click on yes, and we can see that we now have an extra portion of nachos in our dish. Suppose I click on minus, we can see that we now have no extra portions of nachos. But what if I click on minus again? That would mean that nachos itself would be removed from our dish. But since nachos forms the base of our dish, what would happen to the toppings if we decided to remove the nachos? Let's see. We get a message saying that discarding the tortilla chips would mean clearing out all our selections, including the toppings. And it asks us as to whether or not we'd like to proceed with this. So, like I mentioned, since nachos is the base itself of our dish, removing nachos would also mean clearing out all our toppings, because it wouldn't make sense to have toppings without nachos. So, suppose I do click on yes, we can now see that we're redirected to the first step of the customization of our nachos dish, where we have to select the composition of our nacho chip, and we have to basically start from scratch. So let's say I go with the same kind of nacho chips that I had chosen earlier, which is this one, which is around 30% wheat and 70% corn. So I'll just click on the circle here, and the nacho chips that we wanted have been added to our little illustration here, and the calorie value and the price has also been updated, and the preview section also contains a description of the kind of nacho chips we've chosen. Now I'll go to our next section, and we're in the topping section here. If you notice, the topping section seems kind of reduced in the number of toppings it has, because firstly the slider bar has increased in length, so clearly the toppings are much limited than they were before. And if we look more closely, we can see that all these toppings are vegetarian toppings. Now this is because the filters that we had set earlier are still retained, right? We had set some filters before. Mainly we had set a filter for vegetarian options to be shown, and that particular filter is still retained since we haven't completed placing our order. So the way that this app is designed is, the filters that you apply in one section are retained through all sections um, until unless you complete placing a full order. If you're in the same order and even if you go back and forth, the filters are still retained. So in order to get the full range of toppings, I'd have to go and clear the filters. So let's say I want to see my full range of toppings now. I'll access the menu and I'll click on the filter icon and I'll clear the filters we had applied before. So the vegetarian option was the only filter that we had set earlier. So I'll just deselect that. But just to be on the safer side, let's quickly scroll down and confirm that we have no other filters selected. Yep, we don't really have any other filters selected, which means that we can now see the full range of toppings after applying this. So I'll scroll back to the top and confirm my selection. But before we do that, we can see our apply to all selections being ticked here. So would it really matter if I leave it checked as it is, or would I have to uncheck it? So it doesn't really matter how you leave it, since these two options are for all the filters that you set from this point, right? So since we haven't selected any actual filters, uh, the purpose of these options is redundant. So it wouldn't really matter if you leave it checked or unchecked. I'm just going to uncheck it anyways. And I'll click on this tick mark here to confirm my selection. And I'll push back the menu. And you can immediately see that some non-vegetarian toppings have appeared. And our scroll bars also become shorter in length, which means that we now have a wider range of toppings to browse through like we had seen before. Um, So now we can go back to our menu and start to explore some of the features that we haven't yet seen. So we've actually seen how the gamify mode works. We've also seen a brief overview of how the filters work. So the two features we haven't yet seen are these two. Let's come to this one first, which is this little bookmarks icon. So what this essentially represents is saved combos. Now, what are saved combos? I'll quickly click on this icon so that we can understand more. So we have a box here with a bunch of different combinations of toppings and sauces. Um, some of them have only toppings, some of them have only sauces, and some of them have both. So saved combos is essentially this, right? It's combinations of toppings or sauces or both that you have saved so that you can use them in your future nacho dishes, and you can also use them multiple times in the future. So it's particular combinations that you like, that you have saved to use later, and which also represent the possibility of experimenting with them. So for example, if I choose one of these combinations, um, these particular toppings get selected to be added as part of my dish, and I can also add a couple more of toppings and a couple more of sauces and create a new combination altogether from this saved combination. Let's actually see how this works. So for now, say I want to select the first saved combo, which is pan fried tofu, chili, and bell peppers. So I'll click on that. And we can also see that gray square, which was light gray before, has become a dark gray, which means that we can now confirm a selection. So earlier nothing was selected, so we couldn't really confirm anything since nothing was selected. But now since we have something selected, the box is darkened to indicate that you can actually confirm your selection. Now let's explore some more of the saved combos and see if we should select another saved combo to go along with this. Uh, so out of these, ham, cheese, and barbecue sauce looks interesting to me. So we haven't yet come to the sauces section, but barbecue sauce is one of the sauces in the sauces section. So this entire thing forms one saved combo, which is ham, cheese, and barbecue sauce. Um, I'll select this as well. And so what I have in total is two different saved combinations. pan-fried tofu, chili and bell peppers, and ham, cheese and barbecue sauce, and I'd like all of these to be included in my dish. So I'll confirm my selection. We can see that all the toppings that were part of the saved combos we had chosen are now selected in our interface. I'll just push the menu back in so that it's easier for us to view. We can see pan-fried tofu being shown as selected, chili, ham. We also have bell peppers being indicated as selected, and we also have cheese being indicated as selected. So all the toppings that were part of the saved combos we had selected are selected in the interface as well, and they're also added to our preview section. If you scroll down further in the preview section, you will also actually see a sauces section and barbecue sauce being added under that. Now we can't actually visualize the barbecue sauce being indicated as selected since currently we're in the topping section and not the sauces section, but we can confirm that it's nonetheless added to our dish since it's part of our preview section here, which means that it's included in our dish. Now, other than this, we can also see that the illustration of the nachos is updated with all the toppings and even a little stand of barbecue sauce here, and the calorie value and the price has also been modified. So that's pretty much how we select a saved combo. Now, how do we make a new saved combination? I want cheese and bell peppers to be there in my dish, so I won't do anything to that, and I'll just scroll through my other toppings to see what to add or remove. I think I want to remove pan-fried tofu as well as chili and add black beans instead to my dish. So I'll first deselect pan-fried tofu. I'll also deselect chili, and you can see the modifications being made accordingly here, and that's also being updated in the toppings. We can see that pan-fried tofu and chili is missing from the toppings, and I'll add black beans instead. So this is what I want in my dish right now. I have black beans, cheese, ham, and bell peppers, and I also have barbecue sauce as part of my sauces. And I want to make a saved combo out of this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the bookmarks icon here to the right of all our boxes. And once I do that, you can notice that the bookmark icon is filled, which means that our current selection of toppings or sauces, basically everything from here onwards, is now a saved combo and will be shown as part of our saved combos. So the entire current selection is now a saved combo. Let's go to our saved combos and confirm that. I'll scroll down and you can see that black beans, bell peppers, ham, cheese, and barbecue sauce, which are all a part of our current selection, is now a saved combination in itself. Now, to understand the saved combos and how they work a little bit better, what if I chose pan-fried tofu, chili, and bell peppers now, right? Since bell peppers is already part of our current selection, there wouldn't be any change to that. But pan-fried tofu and chili also will be added to this mix, right? And what if I selected ham, cheese, and barbecue sauce again? Since ham, cheese, and barbecue sauce are all part of our current selection, there will be no changes after I select this and confirm the selection. All right, there will be no change to the interface since all these three are a part of this selection. Similarly, if I select this now, which is exactly my current selection, and I confirm the selection, there will be no change to my interface since all of these and exactly these are selected in the interface. So that's pretty much how saved combos work. I don't really want to make any more changes to what I've selected right now. So I'll just click on close here. and I'll push back the menu. You can notice that this bookmarks icon is filled, as I mentioned. Um, and that's because everything that's part of the current selection is now a saved combo. So what if I modify this current selection? Say I choose peppered corn. You can see that the bookmark icon is unfilled again because the current selection is now no more a saved combo, right? Peppered corn is added to it, which makes it a different combination altogether, and we haven't saved that yet. So this bookmarks icon is unfilled. So that's pretty much a complete overview of how our saved combos work. So let me just pull out the menu once more. We've seen how the gamify mode works. We've also seen how the saved combos works just now. We've also seen our filter feature briefly, but we haven't seen all the options that are actually present in the filter box. So let's just get to that as well. So I'll click on the filter icon here, and this opens the filter box, and we can see that nothing is selected here because that's the last configuration of filters we had set. So we spoke about the difference between apply to all selections and apply to options henceforth. We saw how the first one works. Let's apply the second one now to get a proper demonstration of how this works as well. So I'll click on this, and now I'll move towards actually setting my filter constraints. I'll scroll down. So the first section of filters is the food preference. There are four options in this: vegetarian, vegan, non-vegetarian options, and gluten-free. Um, See, I want to choose the vegetarian option as a food preference. I'll scroll down to the next section, and this is my allergen section. Let's say I choose dairy as an allergen. Uh, Then I scroll down again, and I have the price range per topping and as well as the calorie intake range per topping. So the price range is to set the minimum and the maximum price of toppings that you want to be shown in your interface. They're already pre-populated with the default values, which is the minimum value of a topping present in the interface, which is 0.25, since that's the base price of each topping, and the max value is set at 0.45, which is the max price of a topping that is present in the interface. And similarly, we have the minimum values and the maximum values for these toppings pre-populated in the calorie intake range per topping as well. So what would happen if I input a value here that falls outside this range, right? Let's say I clear this and put 0.1, which is less than 0.25. So let's just see what happens if I apply this. We see a sort of an error message appearing here which says please enter valid minimum value in the price range. So let's do that. I'll click on OK, and I'll scroll down again, and you can see that the value is 0.25 again, since 0.1 was an invalid value. So I'll leave this as 0.25 itself, but I'll reduce the maximum price of the toppings in the interface to be shown to 0.25 as well. So basically, I want toppings to be shown which don't carry an additional charge to them. I want only toppings which have the total cost of, whose one serving has the total cost of the base price to be shown. I'll leave the calorie intake range as it is, since I don't have any restrictions on the calorie intake per topping. And this is all my filters that I want to set. I'll scroll up and I'll confirm my selection. I'll push back the menu so that we can have a good look at this. Notice how even though I put dairy as one of my allergens, cheese is still displayed here. And also notice how even though I set a price, the maximum price range to be 0.25 per topping, black beans and cheese are still shown, which carry an additional charge. This is because I selected the apply to options henceforth option, right? Which means that the filters I had applied do not apply to previous selections or our current selections. they only apply to possible future selections. So all the unselected things, all the things that were not part of our selection before, if you notice, they all adhere to the filter constraints. But the ones that we had selected before applying the filters are still retained, even if they might not apply, even if they might not adhere to the filters that we had set. So moving ahead, this was a complete overview of all the options present in filters. Let's actually now see what else do we have left to explore. So this feature is what I'd like to call the freshness check feature. I'll just click on it so that we can properly understand how this works. I'll just push the menu back in, and these camera icons basically indicate real-time pictures of the toppings, of these particular toppings, uploaded by the food truck owner. So the purpose of this feature was to make the process of customizing your dish as close as possible to the real life experience of going to a physical store and customizing your dish. So often when we're at a food customization stall, there are a bunch of different toppings, and a couple of those toppings might not look fresh to us, and they might actually be stale. And this affects our opinion in choosing our toppings, and it also affects what we select to include in our dish. So for example, say I like tomatoes in general and I'd like to include them in my dish. But once I go to the food truck and I see that actually get a good look at the tomatoes being provided there, and I get a feeling that they're not really fresh, I would like to not include them in my nachos dish. And I might even have to bring it to the attention of the food truck owner that the toppings seem a bit off, and he might have to change those toppings as it could actually potentially be stale toppings. So the freshness of the toppings actually plays an important role in what we choose to include in our dish and what we choose not to include in our dish. Similarly, we can even choose to report the toppings in the app, the toppings that don't look fresh to us, so as to bring it to the attention of the food truck owner. So these camera icons essentially represent a real-time picture uploaded by the food truck owner. So the food truck owner is tasked with uploading pictures of toppings each day, and the app is designed in such a way that it accepts pictures only whose timestamp matches that particular day's date, so as to ensure accountability to the pictures uploaded by the food truck owner. So this way the user can see for themselves a picture of how the toppings actually look and what is being served to them, and make the appropriate decision as to what to be included in their dish. Now we saw earlier how switching from the gamification mode to our regular interface um, ensures that our selections are still retained, right? Whatever toppings that we chose to include in our dish as part of the gamification mode are still present even when we exit that mode and switch back to our regular interface. Let's see what happens if we do the inverse now, that is switch from our regular interface to our gamification mode. So I'll just pull the menu out and click on the game console here to switch to the gamification mode. And firstly, I'll exit the freshness check mode for ease of understanding. Right now, we're only in the gamification mode. I'll push the menu back in. You can see that previously in our regular interface, all our toppings were visible and we knew what toppings were there. But right now in the gamification mode, 3 of the toppings are hidden. These 3 toppings were the ones that we hadn't selected before in our previous interface. So all the ones we had selected are displayed, but the ones we hadn't selected and could possibly select are hidden now that we're in the gamification mode. We can also see our metric here, which is 40%, which in general is not a very good metric, but considering that our dish does contain a lot of toppings, and since we're making our dish more and more specific, it is expected that it will have less in common with other people's dishes, and for that reason the metric shows 40%. So I'll just select one more of these toppings to include in my dish. Let's say I go with this one. I now have lettuce here, And we can also see the metric drop slightly. That is expected again, since we're adding more things to our dish, and that makes our dish more specific and also naturally more distinct from other people's dishes. Um, so that's just that. This is what I want to include in my dish, and this is how it looks when we switch from our regular interface to our gamification mode. Let's just now proceed and go to our next section. Now we can actually start picking sauces for our dish. As you can see, a barbecue sauce here is already selected, and it's indicated that it's selected by the yellow outline around it. We can also see that in our preview section, where under sauces, barbecue sauce is already present. This is because from one of the saved combos that we had chosen earlier, barbecue sauce also formed a part of that saved combo, and hence it had gotten selected there itself. But since we weren't in the sauces interface, we couldn't visibly see it as being selected, but it was added to the preview section. And now since we are in the sauces section, we can actually see the sauce being indicated as selected. Now, before I proceed to select any more sauces, if you recall, we had set some filters earlier, and those filters are still retained because we haven't completed placing our order. So, like we mentioned, the filter gets reset only once we complete placing a full order. Since we haven't done that yet, and we're only in a different section, the filters are still retained. So in order to see the full range of sauces, let's first go and remove any constraints that we would have set in the filters. So I'll drag the menu out and I'll click on the filter icon here. The filters are divided into 4 sections like we saw before. The first is a food preference, and I'll just scroll down. Under food preference, we can see that vegetarian is selected and nothing else. So I'll just deselect that. I'll scroll down to the next section, which is allergens, and under that we can see only dairy being indicated as selected. So I'll deselect that as well. And if I scroll down furthermore, I come down to the price range per serving of sauce and calorie intake range per serving of sauce. Now, we actually had set constraints on this in our previous topping section, but since our toppings operated at a different price range and our sauces operate at a different price range, since they're essentially two different components of the dish, right? That ensures that the price range is automatically reset. So, whatever filters you apply above price range and calorie intake range, those are still retained, right? Because those filters are universally applicable. But when you're talking about the price range and when you're talking about the calorie intake range, that depends upon the particular section you're in. And for that reason, the filters are not carried forward from one section to another. And you will see that the default values that pre-populated with also could possibly differ from the default values of the previous section. Since the toppings operate at a different calorie and price range, and sauces operate at a different calorie and price range. So now that I've removed all the filters that I had set, I'll just scroll up and confirm my selection. But we can also see that apply to options henceforth here is ticked. It wouldn't matter whether it's checked or unchecked since we haven't opted for any of the filters below it. So it wouldn't really matter if I check it or uncheck it. So I'll leave that as it is and I'll confirm my selection. And we can see that after we've removed our filters, sour cream also has been added to our range of sauces, and we can now select from our full range of sauces to include in our dish. So the next sauce that I'm going to be choosing for my dish is probably green chutney. So I'll just select that. I'd also like to go for one more sauce. I'll go with salsa for now. We can see that both these sauces are updated in the preview section as well. As we can see, there are 3 sauces now in the sauces section: barbecue sauce, green chutney, and salsa. And we can also see the live illustration of the nachos being updated with the sauces, and the calorie value and the price being updated or modified as well. Now, say I want to make a change in my topping section, right? I feel that since I've opted for salsa as one of my sauces, having onions in the toppings would be a good choice to go to complement the sauce. But I haven't really added onions, so and I would like to go back to my topping section to add it. So how do I do that? If you see, the only way we can navigate is from the current section to the next. There's no sign here to navigate from the current section to the previous section. So firstly, I didn't include a back arrow because I thought it would be cluttering the screen too much. There's already a next arrow here, there's already the bookmark icon here, um, there's already the hamburger menu here to access the different parts of the app. So all adding another back icon would make these icons very close to each other, and that would make the user click one icon instead of something else. So I didn't want to include a back arrow here. So to make up for that, and in order for the user to access the previous section as well, what the user can do is go to the summary section or the preview section and hover over the section he wants to go to, right? When he or she does that, that particular section is underlined, and which means that you can now click on it in order to directly access that section. So now that we are in the topping section, let me select onions, which is what I wanted. And now that I've done that, it's also updated in this preview section here. I'll just proceed again to my sources section in order to pick up from where I left off. Now, the preview section essentially helps you move back and forth between sections. So let's just go back to our topping section, and after selecting onions, we clicked on the next arrow to navigate to the sauces section. Now let's try a different method, the one we had just seen, and let's try to navigate to the sauces section by clicking on the heading, and ta-da, we're in the sauces section now. And this basically illustrates how the summary section is used to move back and forth between sections, whereas the next arrow is used to proceed further in your customization process from one section to the next. Now these are the sauces that I've selected for my dish, and I'm happy with them, and I'd like to proceed to the next step in the customization process. So I'll just click on the arrow here, and we're now in the cart section. So choosing the sauces was essentially the last step in customizing our dish. So this is our cart, and it contains 4 dishes. The first dish is the dish that we added to cart after selecting the different levels of flavors that we'd like in our dish. The second dish is the dish that we selected after setting some constraints on how we want the nutritional breakdown of the dish to be. The third is a dish which is also a nachos dish called Devil's Finger Nachos, which we got from the favorite section. And the fourth is also a nachos dish that we curated from scratch. So we can just click on the drop down arrow next to either of the dishes in order to see the full breakdown of ingredients and price. So I'll just click on this drop down arrow here, and we can now see that firstly there's an illustration of our nachos dish here, and there's a section wise breakdown of the prices of all the components that went into making our dish up. And we can also see a heart icon to the left of our dish and a trash bin icon to the right of it. So the heart icon is used to mark our selected dish as favorite. So when I click on the heart icon, this particular dish will then be shown under our favorites after we finish naming it. So let's see how that works. I'll click on the heart icon here, and a message appears on our screen prompting me to name this dish. So let's say I choose to name it as Nacho Regular Nachos. I'll confirm the name by clicking on OK. And now this dish is one of our favorites and can be seen under the favorite section in our menu page. And it's called nacho regular nachos. You can see that it's our favorite since the heart icon is also filled. Now, what if I wanted to remove this item from the cart altogether, right? For that, I'd click on this icon here, and a message appears on our screen asking us whether we're sure of removing this dish from our cart. And I'll click on yes if I want to remove this item, and no if I don't want to. Since I don't want to remove this item from the cart, I'll click on no, and we can see that our item is still retained. One more thing about our cart is that you can still make changes to your dish. You can still update things in your dish. You do that by going to the particular section that you want to make changes to. For example, the nachos section or the topping section. You can see that as I hover over each of these section names, they get underlined. So once you click on these sections, it will redirect you to the particular page for that section, and you can update uh, the components of the dish there itself. So for example, if I want to make changes to the sauces in my dish, I'll just hover over to the sauces section and click on it. This takes me to the sauces section itself. Now, say I want to remove green chutney from my sauces. So I'll just click on green chutney since it's selected here. So if I click on it, that would mean that I'd like to unselect green chutney. And we can see that there's no longer a yellow circle around it, and it's also removed from our sauces section, which means that we've successfully removed it from our list of sauces in our dish. So now that's done, I'll go to my cart, and we can see that the number of calories has reduced on our dish, and so has the price, since we've reduced one component in our dish. And if I actually check this dish out in detail, I can see that green chutney is no longer there in the sauces. So we've managed to successfully remove green chutney from our sauces. And we've essentially done that from the cart section itself, since the cart section helps us to redirect us to that particular section, so we can make whatever changes we want accordingly. Now, coming to the next thing, these two little buttons here which say order now and set alert. So firstly, what's the difference between the two? So order now is for when I want to place my order right now, which means as soon as I click on this button, this entire order is placed. And what do I mean by the entire order? All the items in the cart, right? All these 4 items in the cart, and not just this one dish, because an order constitutes everything that's in your cart right now. That's how I've considered an order to be. So as soon as I click on this order now button, all these dishes would be considered as what you've ordered, and you will be assigned a token number for your order, as well as a wait time, which shows how long you need to wait in order to collect your order. So I'll just click on the order now button, and we can now see that our cart is empty. The order now and set alert buttons have been grayed out since the cart is empty. We've been assigned a token number, and there is also a list of all the dishes that constitute this order. And it shows that we have a wait time of 12 minutes, which means that our order will be ready to pick up in 12 minutes. We also have a little question mark icon here. So this is essentially our help section. If we click on it, we'll be redirected to a live chat wherein we can place any queries we have about our order. There are also some prompts for problems commonly faced by the users or customers, so that the user can directly click on these and get these addressed via the chat. Now we've seen how order now works. Let's see how set alert works.
Now for set alert, firstly I'll just click on the button here and we get a little time box here. So here we have to set the time for which we would like to pick our order up. So for example, say we'd like our order to be ready by 1 o'clock. So we'd like we'd like to go and pick up our order at 1 o'clock. I'll set the time here in this box to that, and I'll confirm this. And we get the same thing as before when we would have clicked order now here, which is a token number and a little order summary. But we get two slightly different things here, which is the scheduled time, which is 1 o'clock, which is the time we'd like to pick our order up, as well as another uh, field here, which says tentative time to place order, which is 12:15 or 12:35. Now, what is this? Like, when, if you remember initially, when in the initial part of the app walkthrough as well, we discussed briefly about the set alert feature. So now we'll understand why this has come. So for tentative time to place order, 12:15 or 12:35 denotes that this app will send you a notification or an alert at 12:15 or at 12:35 in order for you to place your order. So this, why only these two specific timings? Let's see that. So if we go to home, and if we notice here, um, at around 12, the wait time is around 50 minutes, which means that if we place our order at around 12, it would be ready by 12:50. So if we have a good look at this graph, we can understand that at around 12:15, the wait time is around 45 minutes, which means that at 12:15, if we were to place our order, we'd have to wait for 45 minutes more, which means that our order would be ready by 1 o'clock. So 12:15 would be a good time to place our order if we wanted to be ready by 1. So that's why 12:15 was there in the timings, was there in the required time to place the order in the cart. But we also had 12:25 because at 12:25 the wait time is around 35 minutes, which means that even if you place your order at 12:25, your order would be ready by 1 o'clock. So you can place uh, so you can place your order at either of those timings, and an alert will first be shown at 12:15 for you to place your order. If you place your order at 12:15, um, your order would be placed and an alert won't be sent again at 12:30, 12:25. But if you miss the alert, if you miss placing the order at 12:15, an alert would again be sent at 12:25, and you can place your order then, and you can still have it ready for pickup by 1 o'clock. It's not necessary, however, that always you get lucky enough for you to have two different timings, two different alert timings to choose from. It so happens that today's waiting time is in such a way, but usually there is a time given where at that time the app will send an alert or a notification to you, and you can access the app then and confirm your order, so that the wait time at that particular point of time would add up to the time at which you would like your order to be ready for. So let's just go back to cart, and we have this. So let's say I get an alert at 12:15 and I um, access the app then and confirm the order. And at 12:15, a confirm order button would appear here. So let's say at 12:15, I receive an alert. I click on the alert and I confirm the order. My next screen would look like so. Now the wait time is updated to 45 minutes. Now the screen looks very similar to what we had seen when we clicked on the order now button. So one question that can come to anyone's mind is, why go through all this hassle of setting an alert instead of having the ability to just schedule an order? So we have to keep in mind that the business model is such that this is a street food. This is a food truck, and this comes under street food, and there is not that much infrastructure in place to be able to schedule orders like how you can do in the apps of cafes or restaurants. This is a simple standalone food truck. That takes orders on a dynamic basis. So you need to be able to account for what you're designing the app for as well. So that's the reason this is not this feature is not a traditional way to schedule an order per se, but it tries to work around that and help both the food truck as well as the user. So this is how we place an order using two different ways. Now let's explore the order history section, which we thought we'd see, which we actually saw a brief overview of initially, but we thought we'd check in the at the end because then we can get a better idea because we've now placed some orders. So I'll just click on the user icon here, go to the order history, and we're on the order history page. So the order history is divided into different records, right? And each record has the date, the day, um, and the total value of the food that was ordered that day. So, and under each record, you have different orders, and each order is defined by a token number that is assigned to the order, as well as the time at which the order was placed. Uh, Not per se the time at which the order was picked up, but the time at which the order was placed, because that's what the app receives. Um, Similar to the cart section, there's a drop down arrow which you can click to see a breakdown, a complete breakdown of the dish, its ingredients, and individual prices. And so this is pretty much it. The order history, it's fairly simple compared to the other features that we saw. So that's about it. This is a wrap on the app, and this was the complete workflow of placing an order. And I tried to cover as many use cases and what ifs as possible. And I hope you like this app. And if you have any feedback, I'd love to look at some of it. Thank you.